Hello everyone and welcome back to another PwrOn video. This week we're highlighting the card Malekith. I am here with my wonderful co-host GC James. GC, how are you doing? I know you've had a busy week and it's a busy time of year.
Yeah, doing absolutely great. We haven't had a chance to play any Marvel Snap in the past week, but I've been watching streams and I'm excited to check out some of the great Malekith clips that we've got for everybody today.
Do you think you might get this card at some point, or are you saving up for anything in particular? Like, I don't know if you've been keeping an eye on the future landscape.
Yeah, this is a very interesting card. I kind of dig it, especially with like Lockjaw. I don't know. I think I might be picking up this card just because it is so unique in what it does, and I think it could open up some interesting, fun deck ideas. It doesn't strike me immediately as like the powerhouse card that it has to be to really be like meta changing, but it does seem fun. And I know that there's a lot of like weird nuances and maybe even bugs with the card right now as well. But even so, I think I might be picking it up.
Yeah, I know there was a bug early on to where Pixie would mess with the card because, as we all know, there's that weird text thing to where if it is a number and a hyphen and then cost, that means the base cost versus a card that costs a certain amount. So that was working as unintended. I believe in the OTA or in the patch. I'm not sure which one it was. I think the patch came before the card launched, but it seems like it has been fixed and no longer works with Pixie, to a lot of people's dismay, to be perfectly honest. Let's get into talking about the card. So we've got Malekith, a Series 5 as always, 6,000 tokens. His text is on reveal at a 1, 2, or 3 cost card from your deck here, but don't reveal it until the game ends. Discard seems to be an incredibly popular home for it, as do the toxic decks. And a lot of the decks that are out there right now, those are the ones that seem to be focused in on what's a small card that I want to hold until later and can play out there, but still generally have priority so I don't get Goliath to death. It provides some opportunities for some really cool highlights and some really shocking gameplay. But even just used as per normal, I find there's some interesting stuff going on with him. I have talked to Pulse Glazer from Snap Judgments, and he loves the card, recommends the card, but also doesn't recommend people buying it. It's complicated because there is a lot of cool stuff coming out next season and January. If you're tight on resources, this is one of those cards that really needs to fit your play style for you to spend those tokens. I think most cards are in that realm.
Yeah, and it's honestly, the more I think about it, the more I'm a little surprised that he's not somewhat busted. I mean, to a degree here, this is the greatest deck center we have, right? You're drawing 3 cards out of your deck, throwing them into the field. That location's full up. That could just be really good for draw consistency if you have a deck that can really utilize just 2 lanes and some kind of combo that you're looking to guarantee out. I don't know if anybody's running it like that, right? Using Malekith is strictly like just thin the deck, throw that lane completely away and focus on a combo. But it's interesting because I don't think anyone else has done 3 cards like that, you know?
He doesn't do 3 cards. He only takes 1 card. So he takes either a 1, 2, or 3 cost card.
Okay. See,
so
I'm telling you guys, I haven't gotten a chance to play too much. He's not that interesting. Don't buy him. Garbage card. Doesn't thin anything.
Can you imagine if he did fill up your lane? That would be an insane card. Although there's a little bit of fun with Grandmaster so that you can double proc him. But
yeah, definitely so. I don't know. Maybe we'll see a clip of that. Maybe we won't. I haven't quite seen the clips yet. I'm excited to see them and take a look at them. But yeah, I don't know. Again, it's an interesting card. I don't think we have anything. There's a lot this month where the cards are very interesting. They're not overly powerful. Maybe it's something where you need to save your resources because we do have the next couple of months just looking like bangers after bangers. But they open up design space, you know? I mean, how many other cards do we have that just rips a card out of your deck? Other than Lockjaw, there isn't any. And I can't really think of one that does, you know. Again, you got to throw something in Lockjaw to get something out. This is just straight up pulling something out, and I love the idea of using it with Toxic. Oh, I didn't draw Hazmat. That's okay, right?
he's going to do it for you. And generally in those toxic decks, that is that card that you've got left in there is a 2-cost hazmat, and he's just perfect for it. People cook afterwards, and that seemed to be where things settled around, is toxic and discard, neither of which are, I think, in the gameplay that we're going to be featuring today. But that's sometimes how it works, is you get people that get the card, they put it into archetypes that work for them, and sometimes it does really, really well. But then you've got the other creators out there that are going, okay, what else can I do with this? How else can I make this work? And they produce even more, sometimes crazy results, and more consistent results too.
Absolutely.
Let's get into it. We've got Gregor up for our first gameplay. He is doing a Wong Surfer, which makes sense. I mean,
oh my goodness,
Gregor is the toxic surfer guy.
The Wong Mystique on Camertage. That's
why would you stay?
Huge.
Who stays? Like, who stays with that?
Oh, I see. They had a hit monkey. They were looking for big power coming off that hit monkey, but I mean, it's just not enough compared to the other lanes. You got to win more than just one.
You very much do.
I think, if I'm correct, I think that was there wasn't a whole lot he needed to do there. I mean, I guess he had to play Malekith to have Silver Surfer pop out of the deck, right? But
yes,
he was pretty close to winning without Surfer going off. Yeah, the opponent didn't have much there. They just felt big for Monkey.
They were able to play Hit Monkey, Shang. They just weren't paying attention to priority. Priority matters. When you're trying to Shang someone, when you're trying to Shadow King, you need to not have priority in order for that to go off. And if they had given up priority and they were able to play that after Gregor, he would have lost, because that would have killed that lane. They won the middle lane easily.
Yeah. But again, the hilarious part about this is, like, Malekith means that whatever he pulled out of the deck, which in this case was the Surfer Gregor was going for, and that Surfer doesn't proc until after the turn ends anyway. So even if they didn't have the prio, even if they could wait and try to get that Shang-Chi out, Malekith there to say, well, I'm going to have the Surfer go off after the game's over, so that power is revealed then, and we don't have to worry about Shang-Chi anymore.
Exactly. And that's the benefit with Sarah control decks, is that you are trying to lose that priority so that they have it, and you can be the last to reveal. And this is a perfect example of where Sarah control works really, really well. All right, let's take a look at his next one, and I will actually go in order this time. So it's still the same deck. He's using this Shaw Surfer style deck.
And Malekith has already launched off something there in the mid that he's pulled out. So we'll see that revealed at the end of the game here.
We will. And the play of Mystique there, knowing she won't copy anything. Sometimes it's about having that 3 cost on the board just in case.
Yeah, a couple extra points might make the difference in a tiebreaker, you know?
You've got the Surfer there. The Absorbing Man is copying the Surfer. You've got Mystique down. And then Malekith has Sage hiding underneath it. And that's that sneaky Sage. By one as well.
By 1 point.
Like, holy crap. You think about that.
Yep.
If you put that Mysterio middle, he loses. But that's the thing, is he didn't. He put that Mysterio in the wrong place. And sometimes it comes down to a misplay. Sometimes it comes down to, well, I'm not expecting them to be hiding a Sage underneath there. Yep. And that's the beauty of this style of deck, is you do have that hideability. You do have that, they don't know what I've got. And that's what people were expecting, is a lot of Sage plays and things of that sort.
Yeah, and really strong again, like, because you delay that Sage proc. So even though when Sage technically showed up there in the middle location, she would have only seen 2 cards. But now that we're waiting until the end of the game, we can fill up that last spot and really see some big numbers fall out of Sage.
Yep. 30 is pretty good for the amount of stuff that he has on there, because he didn't pay to play Makari. You know, Miss Magic was 3 and Malekith was 4. Everything else was free in that lane. And it allows you to then go, okay, I can leave that lane B and I can move off somewhere else. And he got really lucky with that Makari play, jumping into that lane. Because if she had jumped to the right, the game is a loss. But I think that's one of the struggles with these style of decks, is that there is a level of unpredictability. But it's still successful. It's still a nice win. And we've got one more for Gregor, hiding in the Dark Dimension, which is the hot location today. So my recommendation, this is all against the same opponent as well, so that makes sense. I'm like, wait, their deck looks very, very familiar.
Yeah, once again, seeing Malekith come down here in the last turn, the last card over on Dark Dimension. Again, just being a cool card for just, hey, there's a card left in my deck. I need it to come out on the last turn. Like I've got a 50-50 or a 33% chance because there's not that many cards left, and I didn't get to play it. But by golly, we're gonna see it pop out, I think.
Yep. And then Malekith
pulling the Killmonger. My goodness, swinging the mid like that. Let's go. Let's go.
And again, by one on the left. The poor person that he played against, I am sure they just threw their phone into the lake after this game was over. Like, oh man, that's rough.
That was good. Yeah, and looking at the deck tracker there, it was what? Killmonger, Makari, and Sarah. So we knew 50-50 chance that Malekith was going to pull that Killmonger, giving enough in the middle to swing it. I like this about Malekith. I like that idea. I really liked it about the Blob as well, in a way, where it was like my big finishing power card move still in my deck. Blob gets you that chance to use that card anyway, even though it's in your deck. Malekith is the same kind of thing. Oh, we missed. We went the whole game without drawing our 2-drop, our 3-drop that we really need to win it. Let's see if we get one more shot with Malekith.
Exactly. And I was playing it with a little bit of a Toxic Surfer, and being able to play Malekith, knowing that you've got a hidden, hazmat or something underneath there, and then go, well, what if I just toss Odin on top of there for the end of the game? It can be really good because it does provide that proc, because he is his solo Dark Dimension. So you playing something like Odin in there afterwards, it won't happen until the end of the game. Would work with Sage too. But I mean, at that point, do you need to win that much in the game? That's the other question that you have. Like, that is very much a win more card. Okay, so let's move off to Lufku as our next set of clips. He's doing the Affliction style. He has no hazmat in there, so his Affliction is primarily just using cards like Red Guardian, Man Thing, and Shadow King.
So, there was I think 3 points that they had on the field there. At the start of this, all the power came down right there in the last turn. That was big. And again, we see that Sage was the Malekith card that came out, being able again to put cards after Sage so that when she shows up, she's got something to proc on. That was a lot of power for one turn. Holy smokes.
Crazy amount of power. They had given up middle thinking that should be good, and you would think that it would be. They have 19 power on the left in one turn. Lufku completely just wiped them out with that.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's a decent card, and it looks like his Sage got put here by Malekith and because of Bifrost, right? And like with Dark Dimension, those cards don't move until the end of the game.
Those are not revealed.
That is
so strong.
So good. So very good. And having Maximus in there is a really interesting choice too. Just it's a 2/6 body, and it's the kind of thing, if you have Sarah down, a 1/6 at the end of the game, that's pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you just play that last turn for all those points, right? You don't need to actually let them benefit from the draw.
Nope.
Just wait for the last turn.
Exactly. And that's where he fits the best. And it's obvious in situations like this that or if you're playing against Dracula, you can Black Widow and Maximus on the last turn. And now with Black Widow being inactivate, I don't know if you noticed this, but she is now an activate. So you play Maximus, you activate Black Widow, they get 2 cards, and if Dracula becomes big in the meta, I might have to look at doing something like that again, because that'll do it. And actually, I just realized, if you Black Widow and then Maximus, they don't draw those 2 cards.
Right.
All right. I might need to do some cooking after this. I don't cook very well when it comes to this. But maybe we need to work something out. Okay, let's take a look at Lufku's next video. It's interesting because we can't ever see what is hiding under that Malekith. So we get the surprise just like they do.
Yeah, this time we actually had more points on the board at the start than we did last time. Seeing a lot of power be dropped right down here in the Pet Mansion between the Sage and the Hit Monkey. Interesting though, it looks like it's going to come down to what's behind that Malekith.
Can you guess what's behind that Malekith? Let's see if you could figure out the puzzle as to what he's going to hit with, and he's so thrilled about.
Yeah, because we should be able to see it, right? Because it's known to the deck tracker.
Yep.
So it's not Sarah, it's not US Agent. Couldn't be Sarah no matter what, you know?
Yep.
Oh my God. No, Luke Cage. Luke Cage is on the board already.
Yep. There's one card. I'm wondering if the deck tracker is... Oh, no, the deck tracker would work with it because you know what card it is. Well, let's just take a look.
Let's see what it is.
The beautiful Shadow King.
Oh, the Shadow King. Oh my goodness. That's going to annihilate that dagger just perfectly.
That is the thing with Affliction decks, is having that final turn just end your career in one fell swoop is what makes them so good. Being able to save that Luke Cage and just play it at the end and them go from absolutely winning to absolutely losing. It's a really good feeling.
This Affliction deck is so cool too because it's running some Affliction, it's getting in there, but it's not running the Hazmat. So you've got the room for the Shadow King, which can really take like a lot of the cards that we're seeing right now that build power, that get this power. It's not just like 4/10 slopping down on the table anymore. It's about these cards that have additive power that Shadow King can take away. And if you're running Hazmat, Shadow King's removing damage tokens too much because you're just throwing them all over the place. But this Affliction deck is like targeted Affliction. So then you can still get power out of Shadow King for another lane. This is cool. I like this deck.
What I find so interesting about this style is this seemed to be the more popular style right off the bat, and then it switched to starting to use things like getting rid of Shadow King, tossing in Hazmat, tossing in Ajax and stuff like that. Ajax, being able to switch things up and go, okay, this is good, but what if I optimized it even more? And I think it's the benefit of a lot of creators and a lot of people on our team getting in early, getting those cards out there, testing decks, and then other people, doing the same thing. I think deck building is often additive, and it is so nice to see this constant, thrust forward of, okay, well, this is how we started, but what if we did this? And then what if we changed this piece? And, you change a couple pieces in a 12-card deck, you change 2 pieces and you've done 20% of a deck. So it can be dramatic. Let's completely transition to another entirely different style. What if we did Malekith Thanos?
Ooh, little Thanos. Okay.
Yep. Because Thanos is back. That OTA was a big buff. So he's not looking at anything. He's leaving it. Malekith is underneath there. He doesn't know what card is there. 7 power time stone is how you do it. Now, I don't know if I've seen any other decks playing Thanos Malekith, because I don't know how often you would want one of your stones to be pulled underneath there, but
yeah, it's interesting.
It is. And sometimes that's what it takes, is you want to be surprised by a deck. You want to just try something out. And that's the thing, is if you don't test stuff out, Perry's post-infinite, he wanted to just fiddle around with stuff. And he's like, what if we just did some random stuff with Thanos? And I don't think this is an optimal list, but that doesn't mean that it's not something that's at least interesting to try.
Yeah. So I dig it. I like the idea too of like utilizing Fastos here to make the cards that Malekith is going to pull out just that much more powerful by chance. It may just be a cheaper card, but like we got the power in that one, and that's what made the difference there. Time Zone winning that middle lane.
7 power time stone. That's not going to be a common thing that you have happen to you. That's for damn sure. All right, let's take a look at Perry's next video. He had a deck redeem for a Nimrod deck. I was in his stream when he was doing this. It was a Symbiote Spider-Man Nimrod deck. I think he changed it up to add Symbiote Spider-Man in here. And he had at the beginning of this, that far right lane was full, and he was very disappointed that he misplayed until he had the Killmonger show up, and then 8-cube win,
Very nice.
and the Nimrods, all where you needed
Yeah,
to be.
I didn't think about that. Most of the destruction enablers are right there in Malekith's zone. And so yeah, fitting it with Nimrod, I like that a lot. I was Invisible Woman's kind of good with Nimrod for the same reason. You can kind of throw a Carnage back there behind the Invisible Woman and let it hit a Nimrod after the game's been had. Very cool application, Malekith, even finding its way into some destruction shells.
Yep. And I think in that respect, having something like a null on board and being able to play it early, him pulling an X-23 sucks or a Deadpool sucks. But if you can work it around to where he's pulling something that will destroy a bigger cost card or a bigger powered card like Malekith, that just fuels up null. I don't know if that's an archetype that works. I have not seen it. Probably doesn't, which is why I don't build decks. But there's something in there that can be interesting and can change things around. And you're limiting what can be pulled out in a deck creation like this. This one's a little bit dangerous because you really do not want him to pull out X-23, Nico, Zabu. Those are hits you really don't want to have. And this was not an easy get for this win, but it did work. And the deck itself can be strong, assuming people aren't running counters to it. Yeah. Yep. With Surtur calming down a little bit, I think that is a little bit more of a free option too.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing really ruins my day more when I'm playing Destroyer than queuing into a conquest round and they've got both Cosmo and armor. And it's just like, here's your silver ticket. You can have it. Yep. I'm not going to win this one.
That one, or if I see Erisham, I'm just like, can I just leave now? Can I just pretend like this didn't happen?
Yeah.
So now we are going to take a look at the top 5 decks that I found from Untapped's website. It's interesting taking a look at his stats because right now he's got a much lower played percentage than Frigga did. He is at a 4.5% versus Frigga, who is at double that. I don't know what drove that. We're looking a little bit earlier than we did with Frigga. I think Frigga was much later in the week, so that could have something to do with it. That could change as the time goes on. But his win rates are decent. They're nothing like to scream home about, but 55%, considering that is his 1-1 played. But the funny thing is it's almost exactly the same as his 1 in deck percentage, which is 54%.
That makes sense to me though, because if he's in the deck, chances are the card you really wanted to target with him was in your hand and played.
This is why they pay you the big bucks.
I know. So yeah, I dig it. I think the stats kind of line up to show about what we had felt, right? Like this is an interesting card. It's got utility. It's not going to be meta or game changing or breaking, but it's going to be fun and you can tinker around with it. And it fits into certain shells. And again, the big thing that I think that we see out of these stats is that Malekith is there to make sure that your other card that makes you win goes off. That's either going to be because Malekith is still in your deck and you had it in your hand, or Malekith is pulling it out of your deck into play. But your combo piece that's in a 1, 2, 3 range, this card can help make sure you play it. Similar to Iron Lad.
Yep. I miss the heydays of Ironland being the quintessential card to play. I still think he's got a lot of value, but I do think that he needs to have a resurgence. But let's take a look at the spotlights that are here. I don't know if you have the base of these cards. So we've got some interesting spotlights. Thena is an exceptionally good card still. I think she is still going to be a solid card for a while. Valentina fits really well in some of the Affliction decks, especially ones where you are aiming to have a Luke Cage on board.
I think she's an all right spotlight. She's an all right card. I think put into, I think it's cute that Malekith is coupled with 2 cards that is within range for him to pull out of your deck. But yeah, this one's probably a pretty good one. Thena's a strong card. Valentina just recently got buffed, strongest she's ever been. And in general, I think Valentina is great for anyone who likes the Dino or Agent deck. She fits in there so well, Collector, those type decks. And for me personally, I'm a big fan of Valentina because she's gonna get me a card that has some sort of utility. Now, sometimes it's Zola, and oh dang, that's a big miss, right? But that's what you risk with RNG. But I like her better than over, say, an Agent 13 giving you just a random card out of anywhere. Like, hey, a 12 power Giganto, that's going to win me left lane. You know, I got no problems with that.
Yep. What's funny is mentioning that those are two cards that he can pull, and they are probably, along with some of the others that we talked about before, the two worst cards to get hidden until the end of the game.
Yeah, it's kind of cute that he's paired with them, but yeah, they're not actually good combo pieces with him. Which is a shame, I think, in a big way when it comes to spotlights. But they're still two very, very good cards that I think that if you wanted Malekith, and you hit one of these, like, you're not going to be too upset. In fact, I dare say that there's a chance that if you're a big Agent Dino player, if you're a big bounce player, this spotlight's not actually about Malekith at all. Those two cards having very distinct homes within the meta, very distinct shells that they fit with it and work really well with. Malekith is still going to be your playground card, guys. It's still going to be your experiment, your design fun, your deck building fun. If that's what brings you joy, that's what brings you joy. Athena and Valentina, though, they bring wins. They have decks that they fit into. So if one of those decks is a deck that you want to play and brings you joy, here's your spotlight.
Couldn't agree more. Now let's go on to take a look at some of the decks that Malekith is best in. As I mentioned previously, we've got the toxic decks. This is where things really settled around, because you look at pretty much any of those cards outside of potentially White Widow and Cassandra Nova, not your best hit for an end of the game card. And it's funny, I remember people talking about the fact that that's what they showed in the video for the cards this month. They showed Cassandra Nova, which on the last turn, you've got, what, 2, maybe 3 cards left in your deck? That's not going to do you too much. But almost everything else works really, really well, because maybe they're not going to fill up that lane that he goes in, and that White Widow is going to toss over a -4 that doesn't get destroyed.
Yeah, I kind of like that about the White Widow, right? If it does get pulled by your Malekith, there's a chance your opponent just doesn't realize they need to fill that lane, that they need at least 3 cards into that lane. Whereas if you're playing White Widow on curve, they now know how to get rid of that power. They can play towards it, they can run towards it and expect it. I kind of agree with you on the Nova bit. I would almost, it got me starting to think about, like, well, what if we were doing like, maybe Nova Dark Hawk with rocks and stuff, you know, to where, well, you have more cards in your decks because now I can drain power off of rocks or something. But I would definitely say, out of all the cards here, you can cut Cassandra Nova. That's got to be your flexible spot that if you don't have Nova, don't worry, you can still play this Affliction deck, right? It's got to be the least important card in here.
I will make one addendum: unless you're facing a ton of Erisham, then it doesn't matter. When you pull her, then she's or Thanos, because there are a lot more people playing Thanos. So that's a good point. I think that is probably the mindset that this, because I'm trying to think about it. I'm like, well, why is she?
The OTA just happened, right? Yeah, OTA just happened. Erisham's still running amok. Thanos got a lot more play. But again, that is your flex slot in this deck, I think, where, hey, all of a sudden we start seeing a lot of Darkhawk decks. We start seeing a lot of Mr. Negative decks. Maybe you slide that out for a Rogue, you know? Something like that. So,
and if you know what's in your deck, if you're playing with a tracker, which this is another thing, this is a card that definitely benefits from having a deck tracker on your screen to know what you're going to pull. Like, I don't know about you, but I can build a deck and immediately forget what cards are left when I'm most in need of knowing that. So having that deck tracker, knowing, okay, these are the 3 cards that I'm going to hit, that gives you a little bit of that benefit of, okay, I know if I play him now, the pulls are going to be great. There's actually 2 decks and 2 different variations of decks that are in the top. This was the top for Toxic, and then number 2 was Discard, which of course it was. What I will say, the worst pull out of this one, and I've had this happen playing with him, is getting a Scorn under Malekith feels real bad.
But,
yeah,
I can see that.
You know, your main goal is to have Scorn in your hand anyway. So if you're playing Malekith down, you don't have Scorn in hand, chances are you don't have Dracula, or you don't have another really good play. At least you're getting 8 power on the board. A 4/8 is something. And it's one less card that you have to worry about when you're trying to pull an Apocalypse. So you've got MODOK in hand and you're missing Apocalypse and Dracula. This gives you another chance to pull that out. And any of the other pulls, other than Swarm and Scorn, are the only two you don't want. Everything else, great.
And you know what's something to note here is you've got 2 end of turn effects in this deck. You've got Dracula and you've got Malekith. Now it's important to remember that these end of game effects happen in play order. So if you're playing Malekith after you're playing Dracula, then Malekith might pull out your blade. And that blade may have been able to discard Apocalypse, but Dracula's already been hit. Dracula already discarded Apocalypse once. Dracula already copied the power. Then Malekith is triggered because you played Dracula turn 4, Malekith turn 5. Then that blade pops out. So it's important to remember here as well, because not many decks have 2 end of game effects. So pay attention while you're trying this deck out, while you're playing this one. And don't count on Malekith pulling out a discarding card to beef up your Scorn or beef up your Apocalypse before the Dracula procs if you played the Dracula first.
I completely agree. And that is something that I honestly, when I was playing this, it didn't even cross my mind. Now, I didn't have a lot of situations to where it would have mattered. I either had Malekith or I had Dracula. So it is something that you definitely do need to consider.
Yeah, it's a very slim nuance that you're not going to run into a lot, but you don't want to be running into it for the very first time in your last round of Infinite Conquest, So do consider that when you see these decks put together, especially when it comes to end of turn effects. Other big contenders out there are stuff like Miss Marvel. No, not Miss Marvel. Captain Marvel. Yes. Captain Marvel. Absolutely. So anytime that you're in there and you see a deck like this and there's more than one end of turn effect, take a moment, think about what that means for your play order. Because again, you don't want to get surprised by that.
100% could not agree more. All right, now you're going to be super surprised by the next deck that I pull out. I actually specifically chose 5 today because this one is also a toxic deck. This one I absolutely adored because one of my favorite was Anti-Venom. And the stuff that card can pull, I didn't get a chance to talk with you about it, but getting a 0/0 Ajax feels real good, especially if you've got a Luke Cage hiding in there.
Malekith is kind of similar, right? In the effect of, hey, I didn't have to pay energy to play that card, and I'm getting the effect anyway. So it feels good in this deck. I do like that. I love seeing the Zabu get utilized here. We only have 3-4 drops, but that is enough to kind of justify using it. And I do like the Luke Cage Ajax decks because it's like, look, I might win this because I grab my Luke Cage and all my cards go back up in power. I might win this because Ajax is just going to be too powerful, even with all of the affliction that I've done on my own side. I dig it. It's a cool deck. Thumbs up for this one.
Agreed. And you toss that Anti-Venom in a lane with Man-Thing. That is 14 power right there, not including whatever you could play that you pulled with Anti-Venom, but not even considering the minus of power that Man-Thing provides to those smaller cards.
Yep.
Now, I'm sure you're going to be surprised by when I pull this next deck up because it is also a discard deck. This one, I kind of like this one more. It's probably not as consistent as the other discard deck, but I got up to like the top of 3,000. I think it was at 3,200 post-infinite with this deck. Because being able to play Grandmaster on Malekith, knowing that there's a Gambit under there, can cause some beautiful plays and destroy their boards. And this was even against a couple players that had armor. Gambit will sometimes let you down, but every now and then he will just know. But I think hold on, let's do cross compare. The main difference is you've got the removal of Proxima. That's the only thing I don't love about this. So you take out Proxima to put in Grandmaster. But you can see, you look at the stats, the win rate, the cube rate, there is a difference there.
It's funny. It's one card, but it does change the way that you approach the deck. It changes when and how you're playing the other cards. Just going to show how much of an impact one card can really have when your deck size is only 12 cards wide. Like these the one card change like that, now you're looking to set up Grandmaster in a more powerful way. Maybe you need those discards to happen a little bit later in the game. Compared to with Proxima, you're trying to hit Proxima. You want to make sure you hit Proxima. Here you're thinking a little bit more about your Gambit lines, I think, than what you do in the Proxima.
Either Gambit or that Lady Sif. You're thinking, okay, well, if I move that Lady Sif to the middle, if I can Grandmaster that, then I can build up that lane a little bit, toss a MODOK in there. Like it gives you stuff to consider, and it makes the game, I think, a little bit more interesting trying to figure out, okay, how can I utilize this to get the most procs or get the biggest board clear possible.
Yeah.
And then because I couldn't end it with just literally the two same decks with minor card changes, although I will say that second Toxic deck was significantly different. This is very similar to a deck that got me to Infinite this season. I will say after playing this, I do not know if Malekith is significantly better than alternative options.
Right.
Like, I didn't feel like having him in this deck felt like, okay, I'm doing a better job, because with a Wiccan deck, you need to have that solid curve. You need to be able to get something on one, get something on two, so on and so forth. And if you don't get that, I've still won games with it, but it becomes much less possible. But considering with Wiccan, if you do get Wiccan in play, you can play Malekith and Copycat on turn 5. That's pretty good stats. And if you know
definitely so.
Because the only things you can potentially have in your deck are Shadow King, Cable, Hawkeye, and Speed.
Oh, you could have Searcher.
You could. But it's tough because a lot of these cards, I'm trying to think of the benefit of what he would give. Because if he pulls Copycat, you're not going to get the benefit of Copycat because she has to be
That's what I was
drawn into
wondering.
your
Right.
hand.
She has to be drawn to have that effect go off. It's no longer start of game.
Yep.
I was thinking about that too. I like this idea. I don't know. I think there might be some optimization that can happen here. I'm not 100% sure there. It's interesting because we hadn't talked about it, but I've been thinking about like Quicksilver and Domino, and like, okay, well that's like guaranteed that Malekith isn't going to hit those cards because they're out of the deck, guaranteed, pulled out. And we see the Quicksilver being utilized here and being able to double that up with Wiccan, right? Like Quicksilver's guaranteeing I have the one drop every single day at the start of game. I'm always set up for Wiccan. I could definitely understand not using the Domino here because there's just so many 2-drops in there. But like, hey, maybe that's it. Maybe it's a Domino, and then I guarantee a Domino. Now that is going to lessen our chances to find Wiccan on curve, but now it's just 3-drops, right? 3-drops in Malekith, and Malekith being able to target 3-drops. There's an interesting dynamic here that this deck is playing with, and I like that playground. I hope that somebody finds something optimized in this play space, in this playground, because Wiccan isn't quite, I feel, its own archetype yet, right? It's just kind of like a different way to do ramp. But I think like this idea of always curve could become its own archetype, especially if we see other cards in the future kind of play with that idea where it's like if you haven't wasted any energy yet, you get to do something cool. And I think that Malekith definitely could have a home in that kind of a deck because he's kind of a ramp card in and of itself, and can definitely help you make sure that you're using all of your energy every single turn. This is interesting. I hope to see more experimentation specifically around Wiccan and the idea of just always utilizing every single ounce of energy.
I found with this one, the biggest difference that I noticed is that it felt a bit on the clunky side as far as what you're wanting to play on curve. Because if I remember correctly, he does diminish one of the curve cards or one of your big power cards, and that's one of the tough things is you want to be able to pull out power from your deck. You want to be able to build that Surtur up as much as you can. But Malekith also, if you've got those cards stuck in your deck, playing him on 5 with Copycat means that if you've got one of those other cards in there, And if you've got speed in your deck, that's a real good pull for Malekith. Speed is probably the best pull that you can have. And it gives you a higher chance of being able to pull Arrow, so you can play Arrow with something else, so that you can play Magneto with something else. Like, that's not a bad possibility. And I think that's where its focus was in the build of this deck is like, okay, we want to clear your deck out of the crap. You've got Wiccan in play. You played me in something else. What can we get out so that you can pull that Goliath and ruin the rest of their day?
Definitely so. Very, very cool decks. It's great to see that Malekith got some experimentation and some play. Like you mentioned, we're looking at the stats a little bit earlier in the week than we looked at Frigga. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if Frigga had more experimentation. The effect of Frigga is pretty obvious, right? Get extra card again, get card again. Whereas Malekith is much more of a deck building exercise. You really gotta think about the way you're gonna utilize him and pull him together. So I mean, when it comes to the complexities that Malekith is demanding in his deck building and the approach that you take with it, it makes sense to me. Maybe a little less experimentation, right? A little less just get the card, try it out. And it's more about those 5-star chefs out there in the Snap community who are really cooking up and really boiling down to see if they can get some of the sauce. And I think this might be some secret sauce. It might not quite be there yet. It does have a 60% win rate. That's nothing to laugh at.
No,
with 3,400 games. 3,000 games. So this is some sauce for sure. And a little bit more cooking from the best Marvel Snap chefs out there, and I think it might be a big winner and a contender in the future.
Agreed. And if you've got any decks that you have found, seen other streamers play, please feel free to link them in the description down below. Talk to us. Let us know, this is a deck that I saw this person playing. I'd love for you guys to see it, especially if they're smaller creators that not a lot of people have heard of. We want to be able to amplify those players so that we can get their names out there and get their decks played by everyone, because the whole point of this is to highlight decks, highlight plays, and really highlight those new cards and just pay it forward. I think that's the strength of this.
Yeah, gotta agree with you absolutely there, Nick. Please flood those comments with all the great new decks, new deck ideas. I'm sure I made a verbal typo at least once or twice, so correct those down in the comments as well. And do you remember next week's card, Nick?
Yes, I do. It is Fenris Wolf. It was the card that I said was going to be the best card of the month until I looked more into it, and now I don't think that is going to be the case at all. But we will find out next week.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to find out and see some of the awesome clips from all of the great PwrOn team members that are out there. Guys, be sure to like the video. Please to subscribe here to the PwrOn Gaming channel and check out the description. Throw a follow to all the great PwrOn members who are out there cooking, chefing up, and trying out these cards so you can benefit from that knowledge.
Thank you, GC. I appreciate you taking the time today. Good luck on your stream. I will see you in there. I'm going to go play some Diablo with the fam, and we're going to have a good night. So thank you very much, sir. Have a good one.
PwrOn, we'll talk to you next week. I'll see you later, Nick. Adios.
Adios.